Hello dear subscribers and watchers, what's up? From slidenerd, this is Vivs here. In this video, I'm gonna show you guys the most complicated Java program that I have been making on my channel so far. This is gonna be at least 400 lines in length. It's about the bank application that we guys are looking at in the previous video. If you guys haven't seen the previous video, I have included a link to that video in the description text below. So please go there and check it out. So put on your seatbelts and let's get going with this. So let's take a look at the problem statement first that I have here in NetBeans. It says the customer opens an account in the bank. So reading this first line itself, you know that there is something which is very important in this application. It is the customer, it is the account, and it is the bank itself. Now the customer must have an initial balance of $100 while opening the account, which means the $100 amount must be maintained at all costs. Even if you're trying to withdraw money from the account, you have to make sure that the balance stays above 100 or equal to 100 at least, right? Then it says the customer can withdraw, deposit, check his balance anytime he wants. The bank does not charge any fees for the first withdrawal, but for all subsequent withdrawals, the bank charges some transaction fees. So the first time when the customer tries to remove money, you can directly deduct that amount from the balance, but subsequent time you have to also add some transaction fees and remove that money. So we're going to check how that works, don't worry about it. The bank also calculates a certain amount of interest, and here in this application, for simplicity, we are just going to calculate the interest for a particular amount. Now if you actually want to calculate interest, that's far more complex, because then you'll have to remember exactly when the account was created, what was the date, and you have to store that information in a database, and based on the current date you have to find the difference between the two in terms of days or even hours to be precise, and then apply the interest rate and calculate whatever amount comes out, and then add that to that interest and so on. So that makes things far more complicated. Here we are not gonna dig that deep inside this, but we're gonna still make it pretty complex, so don't worry about it. So when you read this question for the first time, you probably ask me that as a beginner, when I have a question like this, well, I'm always stuck wondering what to do. The first thing that I prefer doing is making the required classes. So you have the class which is customer, as we discussed in the previous video too. I'm gonna say simply class customer here. That's one class out there. Then we also have the class account. So I'm gonna again say class account here. And there's also the class bank. So let's talk about each of these classes in detail. I'm gonna say class bank, and that takes care of that. So at this point I just have the classes created. So inside the main method over here, I'm gonna be working with these three classes, and for now they're completely empty. So first let's start with the simplest class, or you can say the most important class, the class account. What are the properties and the methods that you can think about this class? What does the account have, and what can you do with the account? So the account has balance, right? This is the amount of money that your customer is gonna save here. Now this balance can be an integer, like you say $100, but it can also be a float, like $100, 50 cents, or maybe 100.5 currency units or whatever. We are not assuming whether this is dollars or rupees or whatever currency that you guys are used to having. So I'm gonna keep it free of those terms. We're just gonna talk in terms of units of money. So the balance can be 100.5 or something. So in that case, I can use either float as the data type or double. So I'll stick with double because it is the default type, and that makes things a lot more easier. Now the initial balance should be 100 units or $100 or whatever. So we will make sure that this has a value 100, and that takes care of that. If you guys notice, there's obviously just 100 written here, which is actually an integer, but still this is perfectly fine because the double is a bigger type than integer on the right hand side, and hence it can contain 100. You can also write 100.0, no problems with that. It's gonna be the same either way. So now that we talked about the account as the balance, what other thing does an account have? As you guys can think about it, an account always has an account number. So again, I'm going to write that down here by saying account number. I'm following the camel naming syntax, which means the first word is completely small, but every separate word that follows has the first alphabet, which is capital. Again, I've talked about this in my video called Java naming conventions in the object oriented Java playlist. If you want, I will include a link to that video in the description text below. So this account number can be something like, well, A121443AB, something like this, because simply using numbers like 1 2 3 5 is not really that secure. So we'll keep the account number as a string over here that's going to contain anything and everything. Again, by default we're not going to give this any value. It's going to be null when you don't give a value, right? So at this point we have the double account number. Now ask yourself this question: what kind of operations can you perform with this account class that we have here? So I can say deposit money inside the account. This is going to be a method. All right. Again, now if you guys are wondering what should be the return type, what should be the access specifier, for now let's just keep everything plain simple. I'm gonna go here public void deposit. That's all. It's plain simple old method, as simple as that. Same way I'm gonna have a method withdraw. Let me just copy paste this entire thing here and call this method withdraw over here. So the deposit money is gonna allow you to put some money and increase this balance. The withdraw is gonna let you remove some money and decrease this balance. So after this, the next question that you probably have is what other methods can we think about? So one of those can be to actually get the current balance. So I'm gonna say public void get balance for now. I'm not gonna worry about the return type or anything else as now. So this is all as far as the method is concerned over here. So this makes one of our classes, that is class account. So at this point what we have is just the balance instance variable, the string account number, and certain methods here that is gonna work with this balance or this account number. So now let's move to the class customer and try to figure out what a customer is made up of. So at this point, ask yourself this question: what properties does a customer have, or what defines a customer, and what can the customer do? These are the two questions that you have. So here we say that the customer has a name, which is obviously a string over here. Then the customer has an account. Now notice very carefully, when I say the customer has an account, it means the customer actually has an account object right here with himself. Now again, there are several ways to do this, but whenever you say that something has something else, the second part comes as a class inside the first part. Now this is a general rule that you have in Java or for any other object oriented language in general. So the customer is supposed to have an account object that is going to contain all these things: the balance, the account number, and everything. As you guys can notice, things are getting really complicated, but don't worry, this is just like writing int account over here. Just think of it that simply. So at this point, again, these are the two variables that we have with our customer class. So next, ask yourself this question: what can you do with the customer, or what does the customer do? The truth is, in this application there is not much you can do with the customer. So what we are going to do is have a simple method display over here that's going to just print the contents, or you can say the name of the customer and his account. That's what we are going to have here. And other than that, we're going to have two more methods that are going to retrieve these values: the string name and this account. So I'm going to call public void get name. This is going to return the name of the customer that we have, and there will be the public void get account. Again, don't worry about the return types or what goes inside these methods. We'll talk about that later when we start digging this application deeper and deeper. So at this point, we have a class account that takes care of itself with the balance and an account number, and we have a class customer who's responsible for managing the name of the customer and the account that the customer has. That's all we have. So next comes the bank that we have over here. So ask yourself this question at this point: what does the bank have, and what does the bank do? Now the bank probably has a fixed amount of interest rate that it wants to give, because in our problem here we have said that the bank also calculates a certain amount of interest on the amount deposited, which means there must be an interest rate, right? Hence I'm going to say interest rate over here. And let's think about the data type for this. Now interest rate is probably something that has a value like 8.5% or 7%, 3.2%. So a double would really do good for this. Again, I'm going to just give interest rate and give this a value, say 8.5. Well, if some of you guys find 8.5 too high, well, let me tell you, my country gives 10% interest rate on the deposits, so this is nothing new for me. Now this should be actually a constant, but for now let's just keep it as it is. The next thing the bank does is charge some fees or charge some money for the withdrawals, because here we have said that for the first time the bank does not charge anything, but for all subsequent times the bank charges some transaction fees. So how much does the bank charge? That is going to be another value here. I'm going to say double over here, and I'm going to say transaction fees. Let's give this a value of say 10 bucks, something like this. So the bank is going to charge 10 bucks per transaction. How many customers the bank has? Now this is a tricky one. Remember, a bank has several customers, right? There may be one customer, which is very rare, but there are of course thousands, maybe millions of customers. So what we need to have is the bank has a customer. In fact, not one customer, but several customers, and hence there is an array over here. I'm gonna say customers over here, and that takes care of having several customers. So this is an object array. Now the next thing, the question that you need to ask yourself is, what does a bank do? Now if you remember, the bank is the authority or organization responsible for calculating the interest of a given deposit, right? If you have $1,000, it is the bank that's going to calculate the interest at say $80 out of the $1,000. So here we have a method over here, we say public void calculate interest, and this method will perform the work of calculating the interest. Again, we are going to have another method that returns the interest rate and transaction fee. So I'm going to simply say public void get interest rate and public void get transaction fees. So at this point, everything looks pretty good as far as the very high level is concerned. There is a bank, it charges some amount of interest, or it provides some interest rate over here, and it has a transaction fees, it has several customers, and then there's the method calculate interest that is responsible for finding the interest of a given customer's deposit. There's a get interest rate, transaction fees. Same way we have the other classes. Now let's for make everything private. Now one of the best things that you want to do with your applications is that you have everything private, so that people do not know which variable is actually storing the value, and they cannot tamper with the value in any way. So I'm going to say private over here, and that takes care of everything. So at this point, things are looking pretty good. We have our skeleton classes ready and some methods which don't return anything or don't do anything ready over here. So in the next video, let's go further and build with the account first and try to understand how that works. In the meantime, if you guys do like what you saw, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, share this video, and let us know how you would do the same problem using classes so that others can know a different method if it exists. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Have a nice day.